Hi, everyone. Maureen here from the Violence Prevention Program. I'm here to talk to you today about relationship dynamics and violence. Let's get started. This is a disclaimer that some of the content we cover today could be triggering for some of you. Some of what we talk about could provoke strong emotions, reactions, and realizations to your current way of thinking. If you are feeling triggered, that's okay. There's help available. Please protect your mental health, step away if you need to, and take care of yourself. At the end of this presentation, we will have a list of resources for you to access within the community should you need some more support. Before we dive too deep into today's topic, I think it's important that we define what a relationship is. The definition of a relationship is a state of being related or connected to someone or something. We are constantly forming new relationships and maintaining the relationships that we've already established. This is the relationship spectrum. Every single relationship that you form throughout your life will fall somewhere on this line, from healthy to abusive, with unhealthy lying somewhere in the middle. Although for the purposes of today's presentation, we'll mainly be talking about heterosexual dating relationships between a man and a woman, it's important to acknowledge that relationships can and do look very different from this. As we move through today's presentation, I invite you to reflect upon all the relationships that you have formed throughout your lifetime and place them somewhere on this line. It's my hope for you that you can understand where your relationships fall on the spectrum and also the best ways to support your relationships and being the healthiest that they can be. Although there are many characteristics that contribute to a healthy relationship, these are just a few that we felt were especially important. Communication. You're open and honest in your communication. You respect each other's opinions and you listen to what the other person has to say. Respect. You value your partner. You're not trying to change them. Trust. You believe what your partner has to say, and you don't expect them to prove themselves to you. Honesty. You're open and honest with your partner, but also recognize the need to keep some things private. Equality. You share in the decision-making process, and you hold your partner to the same standards as you hold yourself. Personal space. You enjoy time apart, alone, or with others, and you recognize your partner's need to do the same. Consensual sex. You are open to talking to your partner about things that you are comfortable with or uncomfortable with, and all sexual activity comes with willing consent. And money management. Each partner has access to the financial resources that they need, and you share in the expenses of the relationship. Moving down the spectrum, let's talk about unhealthy relationships. Just as before, there are a lot of characteristics that can be found in an unhealthy relationship. These are just a few that we found were really important. A lack of communication. So when problems arise in the relationship, either you fight about them or they're ignored altogether. Disrespect. One or more partners isn't considerate of the other. A lack of trust. One or more partners doesn't believe what their partner says or feels entitled to invade their privacy. Dishonesty. One or more partners is telling lies. Trying to take control. One partner feels that their choices and desires are more important than the others. Dependency. Your partner's friends and family are the only people you socialize with now. Sexual coercion. One partner uses pressure or guilt to force the other into sexual activities that either they are uninterested in or they're not comfortable with. And unequal economically. Either money's not talked about or it's assumed that one partner is financially responsible for the relationship. Let's talk now about the cycle of abuse. Although not everyone's relationship will fall into this cycle, this is a known pattern of behavior for abusers. And it starts with the tension building phase. As life stresses or conflicts within the relationship rise, tensions build. It may feel as though you're walking on eggshells. This is the point in time in which the victim may comply with their abuser and try to reduce some of that tension or alleviate stress. Eventually, though, it will come to a head, and that's where we see the abusive incident occur. And there are many, many ways in which someone can be abused. These range from physical to emotional and intellectual, sexual abuse, digital abuse, and financial abuse, just to name a few. Following the abusive incident, they will enter the honeymoon phase. And this is where the abuser shows remorse or may shower their victim with affection. They promise that will never, ever happen again. Eventually, though, that remorse and affection wanes in sincerity. We enter the calm phase where the abuse is stopped or slowed down, but so has that affection and promises of change, and the tension rises again. It's important to know that each time that this cycle goes around, it tends to increase in severity or intensity of the abuse. As we reach the end of the spectrum, let's talk now about abusive relationship characteristics. The first one that we thought was important to talk about was harmful communication. Communication is now occurring in a way that is hurtful, threatening, insulting, or demeaning. Mistreatment takes disrespect one step further. A partner offers no consideration for the other person's thoughts, feelings, opinions, needs, or even their physical safety. Extreme jealousy. So while some amount of jealousy is normal in a relationship, extreme jealousy takes things too far. One person may accuse their partner of cheating on them when they haven't. This may escalate to a physical or verbal assault as a response. Minimizing and denying behavior. One partner may try to blame the other for their own bad behavior. They may also try to minimize, deny, or excuse their abusive behavior. Controlling. There's no equality between partners. One partner makes all the decisions for the other person without any regard or input from them. Isolation. One partner controls where the other partner goes and who they see. They may not be allowed to see their own friends and family. Forced sex. This is where one partner forces the other to engage in sexual activity without their consent. And financial control. One partner controls the money and access to resources. They may stop the other person from getting a job or from accessing their employment income. They may also steal or take their money without their consent or knowledge. Everyone is at risk for experiencing intimate partner violence. People from all backgrounds, races, religions, ages, and abilities, they all experience it. It does not discriminate. However, there are a few groups of people that are at a higher risk for experiencing intimate partner violence than the rest of the population. These include Indigenous women, people with disabilities, and 2S LGBTQ+ communities. Indigenous women, including First Nation, Inuit, and Métis, are 6 times more likely to be killed than their non-Indigenous counterparts, and 2.5 times more likely to be victims of violence. Historical trauma from the forced participation in the residential schooling system has led to an increase in violence among Indigenous communities. Those living with cognitive or physical disabilities experience violence at a rate of 2 to 3 times higher than those living without. Studies show that 60% of women who have a disability will experience some form of violence throughout their lifetime. The person's disability itself can lead them to be more vulnerable to abuse, as the disability can be used as a form of control. According to Statistics Canada, 21% of women who self-identify as lesbian or bisexual report experiencing violence, compared to only 6% of heterosexual women. Trans folk and gender non-conforming folk also report experiencing violence at twice the rate of their cisgender counterparts. Because intimate partner violence is viewed as something that only exists in heterosexual, cisgender relationships, there are many myths and misconceptions that exist around intimate partner violence within LGBTQ+ relationships. This is true even for those who self-identify as part of the community. Let's explore some myths and misconceptions surrounding intimate partner violence. Number 1, men and women experience violence equally in intimate partner relationships. This is false. Women experience intimate partner violence approximately 3.5 times more than men do. This is why we refer to it as a gendered issue, because one gender is significantly more impacted than the other. Number 2, if a person experiencing abuse took proper safety precautions, the abuse wouldn't have occurred. This is false. There is nothing that an abused person can do to prevent the abuse. Abuse is purely a choice on the abuser's part. As much as we wish that we could control another person's behavior, ultimately we are only responsible for ourselves. Number 3, if she hadn't done something to provoke him, then he wouldn't have hit her. This falls under the category of victim blaming or victim shaming. Unfortunately, this is a lot of the dialogue that we hear when it comes to intimate partner violence, and it simply isn't true. Again, there's nothing that you can do to stop abuse from happening to you. Abuse is the abuser's problem. Number 4, intimate partner violence is not a serious issue in Canada. This is false. Every 2.5 days in Canada, a woman is killed by her intimate partner. Approximately 44% of women report experiencing some type of abuse in an intimate partner relationship throughout their lifetime. This next myth is one that we hear quite often. If a woman stays in an abusive relationship, the abuse she's enduring must not be that bad. This simply isn't true. There are a number of reasons why a woman may stay in an abusive relationship, and there are also many factors that need to be considered when choosing to leave. Consider these statistics. 60% of all dating violence occurs after the relationship has ended. 26% of all murders occur after the relationship has ended. Women are 6 times more likely to be killed by an ex-partner than a current partner. These are all things that women must consider when they think about leaving a relationship. Let's explore some more myths. Number 6. Intimate partner violence occurs because abusers can't control their anger and frustration. This is false. Abuse can be masked by anger and frustration, but it's simply about gaining power and control over another person. Abuse is driven by the idea that the feelings, needs, or beliefs of one person or group are more correct or more important than another person or groups. The abuser perceives their victim as being unequal, therefore providing a rationale for their abusive behavior. Number 7, alcohol and drug use is often the cause of abuse between intimate partners. This is also false. Abusers very commonly blame alcohol or drugs for their bad behavior or don't take responsibility for their actions. It's important to note, however, that your partner's behavior when drunk or high is still a reflection of their personality. It is never an excuse for violence. If your partner is violent when under the influence of drugs or alcohol, it's simply a matter of time before they become abusive when sober. Number 8, intimate partner violence should be a private issue. There's no way for others to help. This is not true. We all have a part to play in intimate partner violence ending. Think about times when you might have seen violence occurring in your community. Maybe partners fighting in the street, yelling, shouting, people saying slurs, or physical altercations. What did you feel like in those scenarios? Knowing what you know now, would you be more likely to step in? Many people feel as though they would be more likely to intervene if there was a crowd of people around. Safety in numbers. Studies show that this is not true, however. This is called the bystander effect, and for people experiencing intimate partner violence, it is a very dangerous phenomenon. Let's talk now about some of the many reasons someone may stay in an abusive relationship. Out of fear. As discussed earlier, women are 6 times more likely to be killed by an ex-partner than a current one. Belief that the abuse is normal or that they deserve it. If all that has been modeled for you are unhealthy or abusive relationships, you may not know that there's an alternative. A fear of being outed. For those in the LGBTQ+ communities, a fear of being outed can be used as a control tactic by an abusive partner. Shame or embarrassment about the situation. Many people feel an element of shame or embarrassment about being the victim of abuse. They may fear being judged by friends or family. Low self-esteem. Being constantly degraded or blamed by your partner inflicts low self-esteem on the victim. Feeling this way can feel as though you don't have any other options. Love for their abusive partner. We can love our partners and not what they do to us. It's very possible for someone to want the relationship to keep going, but not for the abuse to keep going. As mentioned in the cycle of abuse earlier, if your partner is showing remorse and affection and love following an abusive incident, it can make sense in that moment for you to decide to stay in the relationship. Social and peer pressure. If your partner is popular or well-liked, there can be a fear of no one taking your side or believing you if you disclose the abuse. cultural or religious reasons. In many cultures and religions, separation or divorce can bring shame upon the person or their families if they decide to leave. No one to turn to or distrust of the police. Many people fear that the police cannot help them, and so they don't report the abuse. They also may be feeling socially isolated and feel like they have no one and nowhere to turn to. As a result, they stay in the relationship as an alternative to being alone. A lack of money and resources. Many people don't have the financial resources or have been blocked from gaining access to financial resources and are unable to leave their relationship. It can be incredibly difficult to witness a friend or family member experience violence or abuse, but there are some things that you can do to help. The first is just to be there. Listen without passing judgment. Second, reach out to them. Ask if they're okay or if they need your support. Note your observations and express your concerns. The third is to remain neutral, and this one can be a difficult one, but it's important that as we reference the abusive behavior, we abstain from saying negative things or insulting the abuser themselves. Remember that this is a person that your loved one is in a relationship with. Stay safe. Always consider your personal safety. If violence is occurring and you feel unsafe to intervene, feel free to contact a trusted adult or the police if necessary. And lastly, do your research. Find community organizations that can help, or encourage your friend to reach out to trusted adults. As promised, here is a list of resources within Barrie and surrounding areas that help deal with relationship violence. If you feel as though you need more support, information, or resources, please visit the Women and Children Shelter of Barrie at www.barrieshelter.com or contact the crisis line at 705-728-2544. Thank you so much for taking part in today's workshop. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember to follow us on Instagram at WCS_VPP and follow our QR code to our Ontario Trillium Foundation survey. Feedback from this survey helps us keep our funding as well as continuously improve our presentations.